Second. Oh yeah, okay. So we're going to go through each of these, and then we're going to go through my interpretation of it, which is without some of the Chinese orientation to it. I can't say it's without it. It's just not voiced in terms of the superior man and his virtue versus women not having it. So like it's done differently. There are certain biases and opinions within the I Ching that a lot of women will react to today, saying, oh, geez, so listen. But there's a teaching in it, you look at it, you listen, but it applies to the individual, not to the man or woman. Okay, so here, the second hexagram, which goes how he lines the well. You know, he has to line the well to make it, clear it up to make it better. That theme of lining the well, the hexagram that relates to that theme, this is the Pentan, or the special focus, is called the inner truth. And here again, there's a general description above, below the judgment and the image. So above the gentle wind, below the joyous lake. The wind blows over the lake and stirs the surface of the water. Thus the visible effects of the invisible manifest themselves. The hexagram consists of firm lines above and below, while it is open in the center. This indicates a heart free of prejudice, therefore open to truth. On the other hand, each of the two trigrams has a firm line in the middle. This indicates the force of inner truth and the influence they represent. In the lines of the hexagram, the positions, there's a whole way of mathematically inducing influences, and this is some of the descriptions of the text. Sometimes the hexagram is related by its opposites, by character, sometimes by the shape it is, and this is the little description at the beginning of it. The attributes of the two trigrams are above gentleness and forbearance towards inferiors, below joyousness and obeying superiors. In my interpretation, we wouldn't have inferiors and superiors, but in any case, this is how it's been passed on. Such conditions create the basis of a mutual confidence that makes achievements possible. The character Fu is truth. Truth is actually a picture of a bird's foot over a fledgling. It suggests the idea of brooding. An egg is hollow. The light-giving power must work to quicken it from outside, but there must be a germ of life within if life is to be awakened. Far-reaching speculations could be linked with these ideas. So the idea of how do you light up somebody else's germ, or how do you wake up someone spiritually, or open up the insights of other people? How do you teach collective unconsciousness, collective subconsciousness, or collective being, the collective consciousness? How would you teach that to someone in a physically violent or aggressive worldly situation? Everyone has light within them. How do you make it relevant? Okay, so then there's a judgment. The judgment, inner truth, pigs and fishes. Okay, great. It's hard to relate to how your sun could be in the signs as pigs and fishes. Good fortune. This is the Chinese association, but it explains it. But it can be written a little differently. It furthers one to cross the great water. Perseverance furthers pigs and fishes. Inner truth, pigs and fishes, good fortune. It furthers one to cross the great water. Perseverance furthers. So pigs and fishes are the least intelligent of all animals, therefore the most difficult to influence. The force of inner truth must grow really great indeed before its influence can extend to such creatures. In dealing with persons as intractable and as difficult to influence as a pig or a fish, the whole secret to success depends on finding the right way of approach. One must first rid oneself of all prejudice, so to speak, and let the psyche of the other person act on one without restraint. Oh, heck. This is stuff written before Jung and be translated from, so this is stuff that just relates really clearly to what his work would do. Then one will establish contact with him, understand, and gain power over him. When a door has thus been opened, the force of one's personality will influence him. If in this way one finds no obstacles unsurmountable, one can undertake even the most dangerous things, such as crossing the great water, and succeed. So it's saying great things can be done, but you have to make sure you're together and you've secured your foundation. But it's important to understand upon what the force of inner truth depends. This force is not identical with simple intimacy or a secret bond. Close ties may also exist between thieves. It is true that such a bond acts as a force, but since it's not invincible, it does not bring good fortune. All association of the basis of common interest holds up only to a certain point. Where the community of interest ceases, the holding together ceases also, and the closest of friendships often change into hate. Only when the bond is based on what is right, what is steadfast, will it remain firm in triumphing over everything. What has no guilt, no blame. So these are like teachings that become more and more important to the person. So the image, wind over the lake, the image of inner truth. Thus a superior man discusses criminal cases in order to delay executions. So you start wondering, what? And it was deduced. These have come by people thinking about this for thousands of years and coming to these meanings. Wind stirs the water by penetrating it. Thus a superior man, when obliged to judge the mistakes of men, tries to penetrate their mind with understanding in order to gain a sympathetic appreciation of the circumstances. In ancient China, the entire administration of justice was guided by this principle. A deep understanding that knows how to pardon was considered the highest form of justice. The system was not without success, for its aim was to make so strong a moral impression that there was no reason to fear abuse of such mildness, for it sprang not from weakness but a superior clarity. So that's the image of inner truth within the well, lining the well till you collect your inner truth more clearly. And these are, it's a story, it's metaphors, but it's important ones for anyone with the sun in Leo. When we're looking at the individual lines, it's more to this degree, 3 to 4 degrees of Leo. The line within the special, the intimate detail within the special focus is the 9 in the second place. It's just the second place. 9 is when you're divining it. That's why the numbers are there. But a crane calling in the shade. Its young answers it. I have a good goblet. I will share it with you. That's the theme, inside inner truth, of sharing the inner truth. I think Carl Jung was driven, his purpose of this, to have to share his inner truth outwardly. And when his inner truth didn't relate to people around him, he had to move away from those people and move on to do his own teaching when he had to leave Freud. This refers to the involuntary influence of a man's inner being upon persons of kindred spirit. The crane need not show itself on a high hill. It may be quite hidden when it sounds its call, yet its young will hear its note, will recognize it and give answer. Where there is a joyous mood, there a comrade will appear to share a glass of wine. This is the echo awakened in men through spiritual attraction. Whenever a feeling is voiced with truth and frankness, whenever a deed is a clear expression of sentiment, a mysterious and far-reaching influence is exerted. At first it acts on those who are inwardly receptive, but the circle grows larger and larger. The root of all influence lies in one's own inner being, given true and vigorous expression in word and deed. Its effect is great. The effect is but the reflection of something that emanates from one's own heart. Any deliberate intention of effect would only destroy the possibilities of producing it. Confucius says about this line, much of Confucian's teachings were based on the study of the lines, and his students have, well, the master said this, Confucius said this, was talking about how he would throw the hexagrams and find meaning and reflect on it. Confucius says about this line, the superior man abides in his room. If his words are well spoken, he meets with assent at a distance of more than 1,000 miles. How much more then from nearby? If the superior man abides in his room and his words are not well spoken, he meets with contradiction at a distance of more than 1,000 miles. How much more then from nearby? Words go forth from one's own person and exert their influence on men. Deeds are born close at hand and become visible far away. Words and deeds are the hinge and bowstring of the superior man. As hinge and bowstring move, they bring honor or disgrace. Through words and deeds, the superior man moves heaven and earth. Must one not then be cautious? So this is the meaning within the inner truth of how to be cautious, how to do. It is Confucius was very strongly into the superior man and his virtue. So the ideas are like that, and they're controversial in today's more neutral gender view. Now, this whole idea of this line of calling the shade, sharing what you have and being centered with what you have, it's then further elaborated by the hexagram, the gentle penetrating wind. Now this is going deep. It's deeper than we're used to going with astrology, but it adds, you're not going to do this for every chart, but when you want to, or you want to reach someone deeply, you'll add this other dimension. And for yourself, it's usually very, very useful. So the sun is this is one of the 8 jumbled trigrams. It's the eldest daughter, which symbolizes wind and wood. It has for its attribute gentleness, which nonetheless penetrates like wind or the growing wood with its roots. The dark principle in itself, rigid and immovable, is dissolved by the penetrating light principle, to which it subordinates itself in gentleness. In nature, it is the wind that disperses the gathered clouds, leaving the sky clear and serene. In human life, it's the penetrating clarity of judgment that thwarts all dark hidden motives. In life, the community, it is the powerful influence of a great personality that uncovers and breaks up those intrigues which shun the light of day. The judgment, the gentle, success through what is small. It furthers one to have somewhere to go. It furthers one to see a great man. Well, a great man could be the great person, but this is where it's different. This is the older way, you take it in context. Penetration produces the gradual, inconspicuous effects. It should not be regarded, it should be affected not by an act of violation, but by an influence that never lapses. Results of this kind are less striking to the eye than those won by surprise attack, but they are more enduring and more complete. If one would produce such effects, one must have a clearly defined goal, for only when the penetrating influence works always in the same direction can the object be attained. Small strength can achieve its purpose only by subordinating itself to an immanent man who is capable of creating order, or an eminent person, or someone who's more together. The image. Winds following one upon the other, the image of gentle penetrating. Thus the superior man or individual spreads his commands abroad and carries out his undertakings. The penetrating quality of the wind depends on its ceaselessness. This is what makes it so powerful. Time is its instrument. In the same way, the ruler's thoughts should penetrate the soul of the people. This too requires a lasting influence brought about by enlightenment and command. Only when command has been assimilated by the people is action in accordance with it possible. Action without preparation of the ground only frightens and repels. So this is the theme, and you can see the Confucian cultural context of it, but you take it as a metaphor and you can see how to apply it in your own situations. So we had, and there's a special line of a really intimate detail about how to focus on the type of gentle penetration. So 9 at the top means penetration under the bed. He loses his property and his axe. Perseverance brings misfortune. This is a strange one. Man's understanding is sufficiently penetrating. He follows up injurious influences into the most secret corners, but he no longer has the strength to combat them decisively. In this case, any attempt to penetrate into the personal domain of darkness would only bring harm. This is a strange, funny little thing. In the middle of all this seemingly positive stuff, there's an inside worry. And it's interesting in Carl Jung's life in that he was a dedicated person. He brought his inner teachings out. He reached a lot of people. He helped a lot of people. But he was married. His marriage lasted most of his whole life. But then, or as long as they were together a long time. But while he was married, he had affairs with his secretary and other people. And towards the end of his life, he wanted to live in a tower and be more isolated from people because he didn't want to have to. Perhaps he didn't want to have to deal with guilt or other things coming up or being talking about them.